Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream program here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I am your host for today's show. My name is Chris Smith, and I'm an educator here at the museum in downtown Raleigh. It's good to be with everybody for today's program. We have quite a special and a very exciting show for you today. Two very special guests who've been working on, well, I don't know, the latest, greatest project to come to downtown Raleigh in, 65 million years. Today we're talking dinosaurs and design with the person who will be in charge of the brand new Dueling Dinosaurs research and exhibit here at the Museum of Natural Sciences, as well as the people bringing that design for that research lab and public exhibit space to you and to us here at the museum. Dinosaurs and architecture is the theme for today's program. So, everybody who's tuned in, glad that you could be here. Whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, know that during today's program, we will be taking your questions as well for both of our guests. So as we go through the program, drop your thoughts and your questions into the chat on YouTube or into the comments on Facebook. I've got both of those pulled up, and I'll be keeping an eye on the conversations there so that we can filter your questions over to today's guests. Which also means, and I have to say it, please be nice. If you're going to be in the chat, please be a good digital citizen. Keep your comments G-rated. Questions and comments all on topic for today's program. Thank you very much. Now, let me introduce today's very special guests to get our program started. We'll be chatting with two different people today. Eric Lund is the SECU DinoLab manager. He's a paleontologist here with the Museum of Natural Sciences, and he is an expert on ceratopsian dinosaurs. He's been doing some really cool stuff up in the Paleontology Research Lab. Eric, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
And then, the folks who are going to be bringing you and us here at the museum the Dueling Dinosaur Research Lab, the DinoLab, is HH Architecture. And with us today is the principal and CEO of HH Architecture, Kristen Hess. Kristen, hello.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you.
Really exciting stuff. Thanks to both of you for joining me for today's program. Eric, I'm going to get started with a question for you. Less of a question and more of a get us all sort of on an equal playing field here. Folks may have seen the Dueling Dinosaurs, like the construction wall that's up right now inside the museum, or maybe they saw a news article come out, maybe even a documentary in the past about the Dueling Dinosaurs. What are the Dueling Dinosaurs?
Yeah, really great question, Chris. So in essence, the Dueling Dinosaurs are two of the most iconic species known to paleontology, a Triceratops and a Tyrannosaurus rex. And these are two specimens that come to Raleigh, North Carolina from eastern Montana, from a formation called the Hell Creek Formation, which is dated to right about 66 million years ago. So we have two of the most iconic specimens that were found together in the same quarry. So that doesn't happen that often. Typically, as myself and my colleagues are out looking for dinosaurs, we'll find a piece of a dinosaur. These are two dinosaurs that are nearly complete, at least complete for the Tyrannosaur and nearly complete for the Triceratops. So they are just spectacular. And they've been given the moniker Dueling Dinosaurs because the individual who found them wasn't expecting to find two dinosaurs in the same hole, and let alone find a prey species, the Triceratops, and a predator species, the Tyrannosaurus rex. So he gave them the moniker the Dueling Dinosaurs. And so that's, in essence, that's what they are.
Now, you say in essence, what do we know about the Dueling Dinosaurs? Like, what kind of research or study has been done on them so far?
So far, nothing other than, basic identification of what dinosaurs we think they are. And I say we think they are because even that we're not quite sure. So there are many questions surrounding these two specimens that we still need to answer, all the way down to what are they? So they look to us like Tyrannosaurus rex and a Triceratops, but we still need to do the comparative anatomy. So we look at the bones, we look at the fossils, we look at the rocks that surround them, and we compare that to stuff that we already know, to dinosaurs we already know, to try to make those definitive identifications. And so that's why I say, in essence, because there are still many questions that we don't have the answer to.
Okay, so physically, what do the dueling dinosaurs look like right now? Like when we say we're bringing these dinosaurs into the museum, what does that mean?
Yeah, so when Chris says we brought them into the museum, we have 30,000 pounds of Montana sitting here at the museum. And so the fossils right now, they're encased in the field jackets and the rock that they were collected in. So one of the largest jackets weighs 12,000 pounds, and it contains the nearly complete skeleton. I say nearly complete because some of it had to be removed. So the tail block had to be removed separately, and a foot had to be removed separately. But the rest of the body is contained in this giant field jacket. So I'll speak quickly about how we collect things from the field. So when we find a fossil in the field, we got to uncover it to see how much is there, and so we can make an identification. And then we'll trench around it so that your bone or whatever fossil you find is sitting on a pedestal of rock. And once we get to that point, we got to protect it. So we'll layer plaster and burlap over that fossil to create a hard shell. Once we get that, then we start undercutting it a bit and make your fossil now sitting on a pedestal, so basically on a mushroom of rock. And once we get it to that point, we can flip it over, completely encase the fossil in that field jacket, creating a hard case for it, so we can transport it. So when they were transported from Montana to the lab where the initial preparation was done, they were completely enclosed in this plaster and burlap shell. Then some initial preparation was done, which meant they had to cut open those jackets. So right now, sitting at the museum are these cut open jackets with some of the fossil exposed, but not all of it. And it will be my job in this brand new lab space that we're building to finish that preparation, to uncover the rest of the fossils.
So we've got to build a new research lab here in the museum that can handle 30,000 pounds of fossils, plus all of the paleontology gear, equipment, tools. I assume you want like a nice corner office.
Nice office would be great.
And Kristen, as I understand it, that is the job of an expert architect.
Yes, we are so excited. What I can share with your listeners is the great thing about being an architect is every time you take on a new project, you get to learn all about what your client is doing. So listening to Eric is just about the most exciting thing ever. It, makes me want to learn more about science, and I get to live vicariously through his profession as well, so that I can design the best lab for him and his team. So thinking about the weight of those specimens, how are we going to get those specimens in? How are we going to get them out? How is he going to be able to work on them and have flexible space? What are the humidity conditions, the lighting, the power? And what about that floor? Is it strong enough to hold all the weight that he described? How's he going to maneuver and flip those things around when he wants to look at the bottom or the side? So we had to think about all kinds of solutions for that. Oh, and we're putting it in an existing building that sits over top of a parking garage. And the building has to remain occupied and operational the whole time that we put it in. So it's an exciting challenge, and we're really proud of the design.
Yeah, my car is one of those that parks underneath the where the Dino Lab is going to be. So I appreciate your emphasis on reinforcing the floor. I don't want to take dinosaur fossils home with me that way.
No, not that way.
Well, I mean, so this I didn't even think about some of the challenges that you just brought up, like light and humidity or temperature control, and how those can impact really important specimens like these fossils. Can you take us through a little bit of what the Dino Lab will look like and how you're addressing some of the challenges that you brought up?
Sure. And I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay, and walk you through the floor plan.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So can you see that?
Yeah, I'm looking at a floor plan now.
Okay, so for our listeners, floor plans, some people are used to looking at floor plans and some aren't, but I'll just go ahead and describe. Floor plans are a way for architects and engineers to draw everything out to scale so that we can make a plan and everybody can make sure it fits, it works, and that's just how we think and how we draw, one of the ways that we work. And so this kind of shows you, these are the front doors. If you can see my arrow, my cursor, those are the big steps outside. These are the front doors into the museum. And right here, there's a big whale skeleton in the museum now. So if you've come to the museum and you've seen the whale, this new exhibit is going to be right in front of that, towards the front of the museum. And we're going to bump out the exterior wall, blow that out and make it bigger and expand the museum towards the street. And so if you're a guest coming into the museum through the front door, you would come around, you would be able to see a glimpse of what's happening, but you would come into this exhibit area and it's going to be filled with museum exhibits. Then you will work your way through. This is actually Eric's lab right here. So he's on display. He's like, when we go to the zoo and we're watching and learning about the animals and the keepers, he's on exhibit. And his work and all of he's doing, not just the specimens, but the actual science behind it is on display. And instead of saying that you have to be behind a glass wall to see it, you're actually, as a guest, going to come into this, what we call the flex zone. And these little walls here are just half height walls. They're not full height walls. And there's a table with a person to answer your questions. And then here are all the specimens. And it's meant to be very flexible. And I think it'll help when I go to the next and you can see the images, but just know that there won't be a barrier between you and Eric and his team. You will be in the same space, breathing the same air, looking at real live time, the extraction of these specimens. So it's going to be very exciting. And then you can come through another set of doors and go into this zone, which is where we're going to have replicas so that museum clientele can actually replicate and work like the paleontologists, alongside the paleontologists, but with replicas, not the actual. So if I go to the renderings, this is where you can kind of visualize from the street. So you've got the street view, you come up the main stairs that exist now, and those are the main front doors, and this is where we've bumped out the whole front of the museum for the lab. And it's on display 24/7. You'll be able to see it at night, all times of the day. And then here is another view coming through the flex space. So now we've walked from the exhibits. Now we're in the lab. We're sharing the space with the paleontologists. This is a huge bridge crane we can talk about at some point, and some snorkels for dust collection, and the floor has been reinforced. And then you can imagine that this is still the lab. We're inside the lab, but on the other side of this glass wall, here are the museum patrons and guests getting to do the work of a paleontologist right next door. So it's like two side-by-side labs.
I mean, it looks amazing. I mean, I guess, Eric, no picking your nose on the job.
That's right.
Well, you work in a glass-walled research lab right now, but this is even more engaging and interactive with the public than the current paleontology research lab, which is still pretty engaging, right? People can walk right up to the doors and the glass and see specimens and see you and our other preparators working on real fossil specimens. But I don't know, somebody could poke you in the eye this way. No, they wouldn't do that. So Eric, when you see these designs and you're thinking about how you're going to do research in a lab like this. I mean, I've been in the museum world a little bit, and I've not seen anything like this anywhere else. So how do you think doing research in a space like this will go?
I think it'll go really well, honestly. So you think about other museums that have a paleontology prep lab, a fossil prep lab in them. The visitor is always on the other side of that glass. That is, if the preparation lab is the fishbowl type, with the visitor outside the glass and the researchers inside. And, you know, we always get people knocking on that glass or pressing their face up against the glass and wondering what we're doing in there. And you know, they can see us in there working, but they can never engage with us. So a great thing about our museum is that we really love that engagement. We want to show people that, you know, science isn't some mythical realm that is only attainable to a few people. Mm-hmm. So in this design, in bringing people in the lab, getting rid of that glass window, I think will help us engage more and be able to teach better about what we do, and to show people that the tools that we're using aren't strange. They're everyday things, like a toothbrush, a simple paintbrush. We use everyday things that they can go to, you know, the grocery store and buy. And so I really think having that glass wall gone will help us teach better and engage with the public more.
And I think it goes without saying that long before we even had fishbowl type labs, they were hidden. I mean, they were on purpose put away. I mean, it was very much for the elite, or it was stuck down in some basement somewhere, you know, or back of house, where it would be easy maybe to bring the specimens in because you had a back door and you had a back loading dock and that type of thing. But it really, just like in zoo design, just like in all sorts of design, we're realizing that people are naturally curious. And if we want to foster the next generation of scientists and engineers and, you know, all kinds of STEM related careers, we need to show people how it's done. I mean, that's what gets us all fired up, right? Like, I want to do what Eric's doing.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Right? I mean, like, that's part of what I think makes the Museum of Natural Science here, like, an exciting place to work, from my perspective, and to visit, is that we do work really hard to try to break down as many barriers as we can between science and how it's done and who does science, to say that, you know, everybody gets to be a part of it. And so it, like, looking at the designs and then hearing Eric talk about it and trying to get people into science and paleontology even specifically, like, that's a really exciting thing to bring right here into the museum and into Raleigh. But Kristen, you did talk about some interesting challenges, and I mean, like, blowing out the whole front of the first floor of the museum, like, this is going to be a pretty intense project.
Very much so. It's we need to take a surgical approach in how we remove the front section of the building. And I want to give a shout out to the structural engineers, the mechanical engineers, everybody, the site designers, everybody. This is a big team. And so architects don't get to take all the credit. Architects need to remind everybody that there's a whole team of people working collaboratively to make this happen. But yes, we need to figure out, do we have enough power for all of Eric's tools? And we knew we didn't have enough load-bearing capacity in the floor. So the structural engineers helped us re-engineer, putting new steel down under that parking deck, underneath that floor. We're putting new steel so that the floor, which was designed to carry 120 pounds per square foot of load, can now hold 400 pounds per square foot in load. And, you know, paleontology creates dust, right? So those snorkel hoods that I pointed to, you can see there's one, you know, coming down right here. The ventilation is important. How much fresh air? I mean, the scientists and the public needs to be kept safe from fumes, gases, dust, particulates. And so we need to make sure that we have good fresh air exchange. So the mechanical engineers had to do new system design. And where are you going to put that stuff? You know, right out in the middle of the street? No, we've got to figure out creative ways to do that, and then extract the dust and the chemicals out. And then you can't have it be too humid, or this dust would turn to mud. We need Eric to feel like he has a good working condition so that his science is not disrupted. Everything has to be about the ideal, optimal conditions for his and his team's work. And then we talked a little about, well, how are you going to get this stuff in here? I do want to go back to the front. Mm-hmm. If you look at this, actually, what we've done is this is actually a loading dock. It just doesn't look like loading dock. You know, a typical loading dock where a truck backs up is kind of behind Harris Teeter or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually been designed to be a loading dock that also, when it's not a load in, load out situation, looks beautiful and is the front door of the museum where all of the patrons and guests can come and look into the lab. And it generates excitement on the street. But these railings are removable, and the distances and the way that the curb and the walls are designed can withstand the access point of the truck and the offloading of the specimen. Because the first specimens that'll go in there will be the dueling dinos, but once those are done, I don't know, in however many years, someday there might be new specimens that need to get loaded in or loaded out. And so it kind of flips the logic on its head that we're going to, you know, go to the back door. We're putting the back door on display and at the front. So it has to look good and be very functional as well.
Eric, the only thing I can think is you're going to have to make sure you comb your hair every day when you come to work.
That's right. That's right.
Whether it's moving a fossil in and out of the museum or just answering emails.
That's right.
So, Eric, what are some of the questions that you want to answer about the dueling dinosaurs? And what are some of the questions that you think you'll be able to get at, and like big picture questions in paleontology?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, you know, we don't truly know what species these are. So that's one big question. The other one is around that moniker, the dueling dinosaurs. Were these two iconic species actually dueling when they both met their demise? So another question that we still need to figure out. But with each individual fossil, some of the things that we still need to figure out is how they lived and how they died. I mean, paleontology has been around a long time, and we have many specimens of Triceratops, but there are still questions about how this animal lived, what its behavior was like. And so those are some of the big things. And these fossils are already, even though we haven't been able to really do any research, basic study of them, like gross looking at their morphology has helped us, gives little insights into some of these questions. One of those being, what was the skin like? We know skin impressions from other dinosaurs, even Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus rex, but these have skin impressions from parts of the body we've never seen before. And so that's helping close some of those information gaps that we've had about these animals. You know, we still don't know what color they were, but at least we're getting at skin patterns, scale patterns, things like that. And then growth. How do these dinosaurs grow up? You know, they started out, they came out of an egg, and then they got to be some of the biggest terrestrial land vertebrates ever. How does that happen? How do they grow? So still some very exciting questions that are yet to be answered.
And I mean, and it seems like these two specimens, this T-Rex and Triceratops, could really help you get at some of the answers of these really big questions. How will the public be able to interface as that knowledge is, as we learn more and as you're discovering more and the team is learning more here at the museum? You know, is that done in the space? I mean, I'm sure we'll do a live stream like this every time and talk about new findings and exciting new knowledge that comes out of the research lab. But how does all of this stuff get wrapped up together? The lab, your research, the exhibit space that'll be there, the museum at large. How do you see that coming together?
Yeah, so we really trying to be as open and upfront as possible about everything that we're doing. So each one of those fossil blocks that you saw in that drawing will have a camera associated with it. And so for those people who can't be in that flex space with us and ask us questions live right there in person, can tune in to one of those cameras and watch the work happening. So that's one way. And then we'll be curating content as well. So, maybe myself or one of our other preparators be working on one of these blocks, and they'll find something that isn't, that's really spectacular. Maybe they find a tooth in some place. So they'll do a quick little live shot of that tooth and talk about how they found it and what animal it's from and what it could mean as far as both these animals are concerned. So we'll be doing things like that. And then, we have projects that will be collecting all the rock that surround these particular fossils. And we've collected rock from Montana itself and brought that back to the museum. And we'll be screen washing that and concentrating it down. So we're getting rid of all the mud and the sand and really concentrating it down to some rock and some fossils. And we'll be sending that out to middle school students, first in all over North Carolina, and then hopefully all over the place, so that students can engage with us and help us collect that data. So that's another way that we hope to engage people, is really get them involved and show them how our science works. And then once they see us, they pass through that flex space, they see the tools that we're using, they ask us questions about how to use it, what it is, then they can pass into that other zone that Kristen showed, the public lab space, and be able to actually touch some of those tools, the paintbrushes and the dental picks. And then, they can live vicariously and pretend that they're a paleontologist and do some of the work on some replica fossils in that space and see how those tools work. So all these aspects we try to bring together to really show people how the science we're doing works.
So Kristen, hearing all of that and hearing Eric talk about the process of doing the research, but also bringing the research to the public, what's the process for designing and developing a space like this? Is that where do you go for inspiration, or how do you get started thinking about how to pull all of this together into one space in the museum?
Sure. Well, we listened to Eric, first of all. We asked a lot of questions of Eric, and we peppered him and his team with, tell us about this, show us what you do now. His current lab was a great source of inspiration because there really isn't another lab to go to that's just like this anywhere. So we couldn't say, let's go visit 5 of these and learn from what they did. We really needed to sort of reinvent how it will work for Eric and his team. And flexibility, I think, is the name of the game. I mean, basically, like Eric shared already, he doesn't know everything that he's going to find just yet. That's the beauty of the unjacketing and the uncovering of these specimens is, oh my gosh, we just realized that we need to turn this thing over, or we need to move it over here, or we need to do this, that, and the other. The scientists need to feel that the space is flexible enough that they can do whatever they want to do in there. And they're not limited by a column in the way, or, oh, that won't work because we didn't design that part of the floor to carry that weight, or what have you. So it was a lot of listening and asking questions, a lot of looking at what they do now, but more importantly, it was about trying to think about scenarios that we haven't thought of yet. Just what could they need? And let's anticipate more power needs, more fresh air needs, more. All within the confines of a budget and the existing building. You know, because this place
Sure.
is going to be popular and everybody's going to want to be right there in the action. And so we had to think a lot about how we keep people safe and how we move them through. And the museum is doing a lot of work around, you know, I'm excited about when these specimens first get loaded into the lab. I bet you that'll be a big day. And then every day thereafter as these discoveries are happening.
Yeah.
The crane I mentioned is a big deal in terms of flexibility. It's a 10-ton crane. I mean, that is big, y'all. That's a big crane. And so Eric, it's a crane that offers a lot of flexibility. It's called a bridge crane because it can move in a lot of different directions. And so whatever Eric needs to do with these specimens or future specimens, he can do that by moving this crane and getting things just the way he needs them to be able to excavate in the best way possible.
Eric, are you excited about having the biggest bridge crane in all of, I don't know, the Southeast maybe?
Oh, absolutely.
The world. We'll have the biggest dinosaur crane in the world. There's a question for you, Kristen, in the chat. Have you done other environmental, museum, or zoo projects that helped inform the design of the Dino Lab? Because you mentioned, like, yeah, there aren't other dinosaur labs to go look at.
Yes, and actually I feel really lucky because I've gotten to design a lot of first-of-their-kind buildings and projects. So we did the polar bear exhibit expansion at the North Carolina Zoo. We've done a grizzly bear exhibit expansion. We've done some back-of-house work at the zoo as well. You know, you're thinking about, because I'm not a scientist, I need to, like Eric said, I need to live vicariously through the scientists. So I'm learning about pH and humidity and temperature. I mean, there are animals at the zoo that if the mechanical systems fluctuate the air or water temperature by more than 2 degrees, the animals could die. So you don't mess around with this type of design. It has to be really, really precise. And that's why I say those engineers that I mentioned that are my colleagues and my teammates, all that bakes into a good design. We also design laboratories for the state. There's a lab in Raleigh that just opened for the Department of Agriculture that has 5 really unique labs. You know, one for weights and measures where the oil on your hands can throw off experiments, so you have to wear gloves, or giant 12,000 pound weights, just like what Eric's dealing with, and then everything in between, gasoline and explosives. And so each lab is really unique. And I would say we don't approach anything as a cookie cutter. It's more about getting inside of what Eric's needs are and how we're going to best serve, how this space is best going to serve his needs.
Are the other architecture firms in Raleigh jealous?
Maybe, but we do feel really fortunate. I mean, these are cool projects.
I mean, I can only imagine that the other paleontology labs at other museums are probably jealous of Eric too.
They will be.
They will be. As soon as they see those papers coming out.
That's right.
All right. Well, this has been great, but I want to get to some questions that are coming in to the chat. Folks, if you've been watching, you've got questions about dinosaurs and design, drop them in the chat if you're watching on YouTube or the comments on Facebook. I've got those pulled up, and I want to take your questions now. The first ones that came in even before we got started, of course, if you put dinosaurs in the title of a program, you're going to get some dinosaur fans. So, Eric, I'm going to throw these at you real quick.
Right.
Let's see here. Okay. Do you know what the oldest dinosaur is?
So that is a question that paleontologists like myself still debate on. And so we know that dinosaurs were around for about 180 million years. And so which exactly is the first dinosaur is still debated. So I'll just leave it at that. Is that you know, depending on how you run the analysis, how you look at these things, things move around, and so that's just the nature of our science. So, but we know they've been around for at least 180 million years, which is a really long time.
A very long time. And so the T-Rex and the Triceratops that will be in the DinoLab, those are, where do they fit in that timeline?
Yeah, so those two species came around right towards the end, right about 69 million years ago, just before the end Cretaceous extinction.
Okay, so right before the meteorite.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Henry in grade 1 is curious if wood can fossilize. Can wood fossilize?
Henry, great question. Absolutely, yeah. And in fact, we find fossil wood all the time, little tiny pieces, as well as giant trees. So yeah, it fossilizes all the time. And in fact, there's a monument called Petrified Forest that is just chock full of fossil wood and fossil trees. So you should definitely look that up.
Well, and Eric, you mentioned too that you're collecting sediment from the original dig sites, and that you'll be saving the rock that you take away from the fossil blocks as you work on them in order to look for more than just dinosaur bones.
That's right. Yeah, we want to know more than just about the dinosaurs. We want to know how they lived, what other things lived with them, and what their environment was like. And so we get at that by sifting through the sediment, looking at the rocks that surround them, looking at the geology, and try to collect as much data as we possibly can to build a complete picture of how these animals lived and died.
Do you think you'll find any early mammal ancestors in there with your dinosaurs?
You know, it's possible. A couple of years ago, being out in Montana where these two fossils were from, I did find a tiny mammal jaw, fossil mammal jaw all by itself. So there is potential as we're going through the layers of rock that surround these things that there'll be more of those little tiny mammals in there.
Henry was also curious about those, so Henry will have to stay tuned. All right, let's see here. Amanda has a few questions for y'all too. What will the replicas I'm thinking replicas in the exhibit gallery, the sort of public exhibit parts, what will those be made of?
So those will probably be made of a really strong, lightweight resin, like an epoxy. So we typically won't put original bone on display just because it's really heavy. Although that is, more and more museums are doing that, but for this public lab space, the replicas of the dinosaurs, which we still don't know which dinosaurs are going to be there. Are they going to be Triceratops or Tyrannosaurus Rex? Are they going to be some other dinosaur? But those replicas will probably be a lightweight, strong resin on display.
Yeah, I'm thinking they've got to be something that can withstand, let's say, 1 million people every day coming through to look at. Yeah. Inside the museum. Certainly, you know, especially I would imagine when the exhibit opens, several thousand people just in the space of a day coming into the museum in order to see these. Lines around the block. Christian, when you're thinking about building out a space like this, and I mean, you talked about flexibility and how the different areas of that piece of the museum can be used. How do you also plan for, like, hundreds of people coming through? Is it just making sure that everything is pushed to the walls? What goes through your mind?
Well, as an architect, you always worry about making sure that everything is safe. And so one of the big discussions we've had to have, because we don't have unlimited space and because we want it to be an intimate experience, is this will likely have to have timed tickets. So better than standing in line is knowing that you have a spot to come at a certain time. And that, you know, when you get there, your experience will be meaningful. and that you will actually get to spend time with the scientists, asking the questions you have. You know, nothing would be worse than coming and feeling like you couldn't actually get in or, you know, see it. So I think, you know, initially it's going to be very, like you say, very overwhelmed, but we've looked at that from an operational standpoint, because physically it just can't contain that many people, and then the experience wouldn't be that great. You can also do things with the way that you situate walls and you situate exhibits so that there is a flow, so to speak. And you always want people to feel safe. They know how they get in, they know how they get out. So that part is baked into the design. So yeah, if we had an unlimited real estate and we were out in the middle of nowhere, if we could just fly everyone to Montana and they could, you know, we could do this all on site. But, you know, the reality is that we want to bring them to the museum where the resources already exist. And so we had to be kind of creative about how we do that.
Can you put in more parking spaces?
We need it. And downtown Raleigh's just getting more and more the happening place to be.
That's it. Yeah, you were talking about, you know, our 10-ton bridge crane. And I was like, I don't know, there's a lot of big cranes in downtown Raleigh right now.
True, that's true.
True. Maybe they'll let us borrow one of those if we need it. Let's see. Louise wants to know how we moved the dinosaurs from where they are now in the museum.
So from Montana to the museum, or how we move them around now that they're at the museum?
I'm going to say from Montana to Raleigh.
Okay. Yeah, so 30,000 pounds is a lot of weight. And so they were loaded onto a giant flatbed truck and driven across the country. So they actually made, so like I said, those fossils were contained in those field jackets, which are not a specific shape. And so they had to build special boxes for them that would be larger than the fossils themselves, so that the jacket could sit inside. And then they had to make sure they weren't going to flop around. So they actually filled these boxes with expandable foam. And so now those jackets are stabilized in these special boxes, and then they were loaded on that flatbed and driven across the country.
I'm sure it was quite the journey. There's a question on Facebook. I think we've had somebody visit and they saw the Triceratops foot that's on display already up on the second floor of the Nature Exploration Center, the slightly older building in the museum next door across the bridge over there. They're asking, is that the real foot or is that a cast?
That is the real foot. So the other one that's on display, the foot of the Tyrannosaurus rex, that one is a cast, just because that one is a little bit more fragile. But the Triceratops foot, that is the actual fossil that is in that case. And our fantastic exhibits crew at the museum built that beautiful case to fit around that fossil. So you saw the real thing.
Excellent. Yeah, it's fun to go check out and see people explore. Christian writes, is there a way for undergrad students to be involved in the research or any of these projects? They're in school for evolutionary biology right now.
Yeah, so we're still trying to work through exactly, we have that project for middle school students, but we're trying to figure out exactly how the rest of community engagement and public engagement is going to go as far as research goes along. So my only answer right now is just stay tuned to the evolution of the project as we're trying to figure out exactly how all these puzzle pieces are going to fit together. So I don't have a great answer for you at the moment, but we hope to engage more broadly, more levels of education. So.
And I've got one final question for both of you. It might be an easier question for Eric. Kristen, we'll see. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Yeah, for me, that's as Chris was saying, is a really easy question. My favorite dinosaur is a relative of Triceratops called Nasutoceratops. It's about 10 million years older than Triceratops, and was found. Actually, I found the very first specimen of this dinosaur, hence why it is my favorite. I also got to name this dinosaur in 2013. So again, another reason it is my favorite. But if you look up Nasutoceratops, you'll get to see it. It has these crazy horns that come out just like a big longhorn bull over its face. But it is my favorite.
Can we get one of those for our museum?
I would like to. Yeah, it'd be great.
Can you go get us one? If you know where they're at.
That's awesome. Yeah, in your free time, Eric. Well, you know, I want that to be my favorite now that I know Eric's story behind it. But I've always thought pterodactyls are pretty cool. I like how the word is spelled, and I like the wings, and I like the idea of how they might sound. And so I don't know. I'll just go with the pterodactyl.
For some reason, from a design perspective, that makes a lot of sense to me. That the flying reptiles would be the ones you're like, yeah, those ones, they got it going on. The others just stomp around the place. Yeah, a lot of structure. That's cool. That's excellent.
The wings.
And hey, people can visit the Museum of Natural Sciences, and we have models and casts of Pteranodon and pterodactyl fossils on exhibit too. So, hey everybody, downtown Raleigh at the Museum of Natural Sciences is where it's happening.
Right.
So, do we know when folks can start to really get excited about the Dueling Dinosaurs? Is it right now? Is it next year?
Next year.
You get excited now. I'm excited now. But really, to be able to come to the museum and have this experience and get up close, it's going to be looking like 2023 when the lab will actually be done and people can experience the Dueling Dinosaurs in all their glory.
Yeah. But the contractor has been hired and the construction work is getting ready to start. So you are going to see changes. In fact, it's going to, you know, for a while it'll be like hard because, you know, that part of the museum will be off exhibit and there'll be a lot of construction activity. But that's exciting in its own way too. And then it'll bask in all its glory in 23. So.
Well, everybody, big changes coming to the Museum of Natural Sciences. 65 million years in the making. Eric, Kristen, thanks so much for joining me today and sharing your expertise and experience and knowledge on dinosaurs and architectural design. It strikes me as like how similar these things really are. Like Eric knows a lot about dinosaurs and geology and animal anatomy. And then Kristen, you're over here bringing a team together. So you've got, you know, design. It should look good. It also has to be, you know, functional and safe. So all of these interdisciplinary fields all coming together for each of you, and then bringing it all together here for the museum. I'm really glad that we've got smart people on our side. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Thank you.
Everybody tuned in, thanks for joining us for today's program. It was great to spend some time with you this Friday. Make sure that you visit naturalsciences.org, the museum's website. You can find more information about the Dueling Dinosaurs there. In fact, there is a Dueling Dinosaurs website where you can go and learn specifically about them. Eric, remind everybody what that is.
It's duelingdinosaurs.org.
duelingdinosaurs.org. Yep. And of course, you can follow the museum on social media to get updates on the project as it moves along. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as @Natural Sciences. And Kristen, if people are interested in architecture and design, how can they follow you or follow work that you're involved in?
Sure. Well, our firm is HH Architecture, and we're in Raleigh. And we're on all social media channels as well. We have a website. Also, if you're interested in other architects or architecture design, the AIA, American Institute of Architects, is our professional organization. So you could also check out the AIA.org.
Great stuff. Everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.